Dark Souls was an action role-playing game released in 2011. You don't need to know that. You probably already do know that. The game's nearly 15 years old at this point, and the release date certainly didn't make a difference to me. Dark Souls was not a game on my radar when it released. I didn't have a PS3 to have known about Demon Souls, and aside from memes online about how hard Dark Souls apparently was, I had no interest in playing the game. In 2014, the game was featured for free on Xbox's Games with Gold platform. I downloaded all the Games with Gold games religiously because I love free stuff, and hey, I could take a swing at what the internet led me to believe was one of the most brutal and punishing gaming experiences on offer at the time. So, I decided to take a break from Call of Duty and Halo to play Dark Souls. If it sucked, or if I sucked at it, who cares? It's free. I've got nothing to lose. What I found when I booted up this game was one of the strangest and most rewarding game experiences my young mind could comprehend. I was having such a blast, I begged two of my friends to download it because I needed some kind of sanity check. I was dying over and over and over again in this game, and yet I persisted, each victory taking me deeper into the story of this ailing world. Of the two friends that played the game with me, one of them broke his controller and never played the game again because Sense Fortress was that much of a nightmare for him. But he also insisted on playing the PC edition because he was getting deep into that platform and didn't know how absolutely broken the Prepare to Die edition was on PC. The second friend and myself would spend entire weekends playing together, TVs hooked up side by side, trudging through the world and helping each other with hints and strategies. To this day, I still remember beating Gwyn late at night and shouting when I finally beat him. My friend had completely stopped playing himself just to see if I could do it. If my room hadn't been in the basement at the time, my parents probably would have shouted at me, but damn the consequences. It had taken literal months of my life, but I had done it. I beat the guy with the big sword, I linked the flame, and I went to bed. So what was the point of all that? You've looked at the video title. This is supposed to be about Dark Souls 2, right? Well, the thing is, I didn't immediately pick up Dark Souls 2 after beating the first game, even though it was already out for at least a year or two before I even touched Dark Souls 1. In fact, my experience with Dark Souls 1 was so exhausting I wouldn't pick up the next game for like 3 years after that. I beat it, and I loved it, but I didn't get it. I didn't take leveling seriously, dumping all my points into health and strength. I didn't understand elemental affinities, bringing a lightning-infused Zweihander to the fight with a guy that can throw lightning from his hands, and we know this from the first cutscene in the game. I just had high enough strength that I somehow outpaced the horrible damage I must have been putting out. I brute-forced my way through the bosses, and I brute-forced my way through the story. I knew who to defeat, but I didn't really take the time to learn why. Years later in college, I picked up the Fire Fades edition of Dark Souls 3 and the Scholar of the First Sin edition for Dark Souls 2. In those intervening years, no game had really scratched the itch that Dark Souls 1 had. It was an experience I feel like I would have had if I had played the Zelda games growing up, but I didn't have Nintendo consoles either. Insane dungeoneering and challenging bosses where I'm the primary driver of the story had kind of eluded me up to that point. In those years, I was still aware of the meme-worthy difficulty of the series, which only seemed to grow with the sequels and now the Bloodborne spin-off, whatever that was. Something about werewolves or something? I don't know. I only had an Xbox at the time, so I decided to see if Dark Souls 2 could fill the void. It'd be like Dark Souls 1, right? This video is going to be a less structured look at my time spent with Dark Souls 2. This beautiful game, for all its faults, told its story in a way that actually made the first game click with me better in hindsight. The characters in Dark Souls 2 that know the world's history talk of Gwyn and his kingdom with the air of a legend or myth. It's been so long since the time of Lordran that many of the events have been forgotten and discarded in this new age of fire. Dark Souls 2 may not have been the perfect game, or a perfect sequel, but it takes everything I loved about the first game, the atmosphere, the existential musings on immortality, the impression of a dying beautiful world, and genuinely improves on them. This video is going to spoil basically the whole story in at least a broad sense. I'll be looking especially close at a handful of NPCs and their stories and how those stories reinforce the themes of the game, and we'll see almost every area in the game and its DLC. The journey through Drangleic is meandering and unclear at times, and that really rubs some people the wrong way. I, on the other hand, am a sad little weirdo that loves when stories don't conclude in a way that's perfectly narratively satisfying. I love my open endings, my subverted expectations, and the feeling of melancholy I get seeing my character enclosed in a living stone tomb. This video will not be as mechanically analytical as my previous video on Elden Ring Night Rain. Where that game conveyed emotions to me via its mechanics and blisteringly fast gameplay, Dark Souls 2 has me feeling all these things from the impressions the story left on me. I will get into some of the mechanics of specific levels and bosses where I think those mechanics reinforce the themes of the fight, or where those mechanics were the primary driver of my emotional engagement with the game. I'll freely admit that a lot of the bosses here are equally boring and simple as Dark Souls 1. And yeah, look, honestly guys, a lot of Dark Souls 1 bosses are snooze fest by today's standards. Be real, please. The main focus here will be the game's world and the emotional impression that it's left on me with the beautifully somber world of Drangleic and the bleak lives led by its inhabitants. Writing this section after finishing the bulk of my script, I realized I've sort of accidentally made a lore video. I tried to look up as little as possible besides coming back to certain item descriptions, so please take these interpretations of the lore as just that, my interpretations. There are absolutely a myriad of creators out there who have gone way deeper individual topics than I have here, and probably got more right than I did. I just wanted to write about a game I love and how it made me feel. My aim is to make a relaxing video, because for the most part, I relax by playing these games, Dark Souls 2 especially. So grab an Elizabeth mushroom to snack on and some Estus to sip. Without further ado, let's abandon the world of the living for the stagnating world of the undead. The introductory cutscene is both excellent and a polar opposite of what preceded it. Where Dark Souls 1 explained a brief history of the world and intrigued its main set of antagonists, Dark Souls 2 instead shines a laser-focused inward on you, the undead, or at least one of many undead. The undead curse is something that's existed for eons. We know the end result. Players have killed probably millions of hollows by this point. What we see less of is the slow corruption that takes place, where the stagnant immortality causes memories to fade and be replaced by emptiness. Everyone afflicted with the curse knows that this is their eventual fate. This woman at the spinning wheel framed by spiders, she tells you that to your face, that you'll succumb to the curse and lose everything. You'll travel to Drangleic and you won't even remember why. You travel to a sunken ruin and are drawn to a portal downward by fireflies. Your only hope to save your humanity is to first shed everything in order to seek the possibility of a cure. I think as an introduction, this is just gorgeous. The biggest problem I had with the previous game's cinematic was how cool it made this war with dragons look, only to drop us in well after all the cool stuff took place. Here, the focus is us and the journey we're about to take, the very personal stakes of our curse. We have no reason to care about what lords might control this world. It doesn't matter who sits on the throne now, whoever they are. They have to be sought out and removed, lest the world around them crumble to nothing. Character creation takes place in a limbo state surrounded by former firekeepers that cackle at you like, get a load of this guy, isn't he fucked? I didn't know there could even be a former firekeeper. They always seem to exist more like an eternal avatar. The fact that there's 3 here and how old they are imply this world has existed for way longer than it should. I think everyone can agree that Majula is one of the best locations in the series. The sunset coastline, the Emerald Herald framed against the rolling waves, and the ever-expanding cast of settlers in this town just make for such a bleak place to call home. The soundtrack isn't as comforting or as iconic as Firelink Shrine, but I don't think it should be. Something is broken here. Something fundamental about the world that leaves the whole place feeling off-center somehow. The Herald tells us to seek the king. Alright, simple enough. She also tells us we should do this by finding 4 great souls to gain the power required for a monarch. Alright, seems straightforward enough. 4 baddies and a king. That seems familiar. So the game sets you off on your journey with little more to go on than that. You can only level up here in Majula, which I don't love, but you can now instantly warp between any bonfire, which is a godsend given the world design here. You're gonna hear bearer seek less more times than you can count. The Forest of Fallen Giants is Undeadburg 2.0, and I honestly like it even more. It's a much bigger level by far, but designed way tighter and more vertically with shortcuts even I didn't know about until recently. The Pursuer boss follows you around at certain spots to wreck your shit, but if you manage to kill him this early, the souls you gain will jumpstart your power scaling. There's lots of doors you can't open, and spooky trees you can't interact with yet, but eventually you'll make your way down to a prisoner of this land, the Last Giant. This giant seems to be completely still and has been for what must be centuries at this point, but he takes one look at you and absolutely loses his shit. Wonder why that could be. His attacks aren't really at all hard to dodge. This thing has been down here for ages. He's practically stone at this point. There's little he can do against you, even at how early this is in your journey. At one point, he rips his own arm clean off just to have something to swat at you with. Putting him down almost feels like a mercy, but like I said, this is the first boss. It shouldn't be too hard. If you didn't take down the Pursuer in any of its earlier encounter zones, you can take the key the giant had for some reason and head up to the outermost rampart of the fort. The Pursuer finds you up here and now he's ready to party. This cutscene is honestly so badass. His armor is made from the distorted faces of the souls that he's preyed upon. He carries the weapons of those dead on his back. He wants your stuff and he is gonna take it. He's not a particularly hard boss either, but again, this is early, and he and the giant are two pretty decent examples of most of the boss types in this game. Larger-than-life creatures, and knights whose sword swipes are way wider and farther reaching than you think they'll be. With those two bosses taken care of, you can fly off to the Lost Bastille. What I'll usually do here is get just far enough in to get to the workshop bonfire and talk to Lucatiel of Mira, a warrior from a distant land and a martial society. She's brought herself up from nothing as a swordsman, only to be stricken with the same curse as you. That's why she's here. She's looking for a cure to the curse before it consumes her and everything she's worked for is lost to dust. Lucatiel's quest is probably my favorite in the entire game. She's available to summon for a lot of boss fights, so you can really grow a bond here. Like Solaire, she's got your back, but you can see that this life is costing her dearly. From this point, once I've talked to Lucatiel, I'll circle back to Heidi's Tower of Flame to once again be struck in awe at the beauty of these skyboxes and levels. The Heidi Knights are fun and have a really strange moveset compared to something like the Black Knights from Dark Souls 1. I always like fighting them. Off to the side, there's a church guarded by a dragon that contains something really, really strange. An old dragon slayer resides here. Good old Ornstein. Or is it? His attacks are no longer imbued with lightning, but seemingly with dark damage. The soul he drops only says he's reminiscent of a certain knight from old legends, but that soul is used to create the Dragon Slayer's spear, which does have the correct lightning imbued within it. Was this guy merely inspired by Ornstein's story? Is the dragon outside a friend or a prison warden? It's a fun duel and a neat reference to time long past, but I think his moves could have been expanded a bit. A lot of his challenge in the first game is from being paired with Captain Beefcake. The primary boss of this area is a single Dragon Rider Knight. If you clear the areas leading up and pull these levers, the boss arena gets wider, rewarding players that actually deal with the challenge by the big knights and their big hammers instead of just running past everything. What's this Dragon Rider doing here, though? His worm is gone. Did he come here to pray with the old Dragon Slayer? Did they share a kinship somehow? I'm not sure, and the game doesn't take the time to really get into it. Much more interestingly to me are the White Knights scattered throughout the area. The so-called Heidi Knights take their namesake of the Tower of Flame. They seem to be the knights of this kingdom that existed long, long ago. So long ago it was washed away by the sea. If you take into account how long erosion requires to occur, and with how far we are from the mainland, it's likely thousands of years. And still, these Heidi Knights rest here. Their weapons are imbued with lightning. Were they dragon hunters? Is that why the Dragon Slayer is here? There's no records of the kingdom of Heidi left, just the flaming beacon of a tower and the poor souls who quietly stand guard. With this area basically complete, you head down to No Man's Wharf only to mention Lucatiel's quest progresses here. She admits to you she's come here to cure herself the hollowing. She even takes off her mask to reveal she's more far gone than most. The level is also a great showcase of Dark Souls 2's lighting engine. Torches are pretty invaluable here, and having to hold one instead of a shield or two-handing weapons is a great addition of challenge to a good mazy level. Flexile Sentry is fine, I guess, and pirate ships are sick. I realized as I was showering, though, that the Flexile Sentry is kind of like the Capra Demon Gate Check from Dark Souls 1. I felt this especially on New Game Plus when these fast-moving assassins showed up right when you get through the fog door. There's one big dual-wielding guy and two fast-moving enemies in with you in an enclosed space. The most efficient way of dealing with the small guys is to abuse the geometry of the level to distract the big guy. Dark Souls 1 has the staircase, and Dark Souls 2 has this big support beam. Flexile Sentry doesn't hit nearly as hard as Babe fucking Ruth, but the arena compensates by slowly filling up with water to eventually slow you down. It's a really neat fight from the perspective of being an echo, but I don't really like Capra Demon either. Oh well. With our ship, that should probably be sinking soon, it's time to set sail on the open seas towards Lost Bastille. Again, but different this time. Lost Bastille is actually one of my favorite levels. It's approachable from these two different directions depending on what the preceding level is. The Shade of the Pursuer will appear a bunch of times throughout the level, and if you master his moves, he gives you great souls boost to keep you powerful. There's tons of loot hidden away in secret boss areas. The Belfry Luna is a secret area off of one of these Bastille bonfires past a Pursuer encounter and through a locked door. A little puppet dude will give you the option of defending the tower from trespassers. He tells you this tower is the twin of another somewhere else that was used by two separated lovers to communicate. Aw, isn't that sweet? I can't wait to see what else is in here in the build. Oh, you again? The gargoyles are back, and while none of them are as big as their Dark Souls 1 counterpart, the idea here is that they amass in a group of, I think, up to 4 if you don't take them down fast enough. It's honestly a fun little joke, like, hey, you remember these guys, right? How about we double it and give it to the next person? Dark Souls 2 is full of little jokes like this. It feels like I'm being pranked, but it's all in good fun. They're not too hard to deal with. By the end of the stage, you find another favorite NPC of mine, Strayed of Elaphus. He can transform your boss souls directly into weapons and spells, but he also gives a lot of insight on the world. This Bastille existed before the kingdom of Drangleic and seemed to function like the Northern Asylum did for Lordran. Undead were corralled here to be kept away from a society that's long gone. Strayed is seemingly unmatched by the passing time. Most of the petrified bodies you find here are those who have gone hollow a long time ago, and they'll attack you on sight. Not only were the hollows rounded up here, but they seem to also have been experimented on, meaning you'll get swarmed and dive-bombed by these guys left and right. But Strayed has his memories intact. He chuckles at the passing of time and doesn't even really seem to care that his world and everyone he's ever known is long gone. Across the nearby bridge, far down at the bottom of Sinner's Rise, in the deepest, darkest holding cell, is the Lost Sinner, a shackled being tortured by the very clothing she wears and the sword that she carries. She doesn't become aggressive when you walk through the fog door until a suspicious-looking bug crawls into her eye. A bug that looks eerily similar to the Chaos bug at the core of what became the Bed of Chaos in Lost Izalith. In New Game, this fight is a pretty simple sword duel, but in the dark. If you haven't lit torches to brighten the room, the Sinner breaks your lock-on when she dashes back into the shadows. It's a fun twist. In New Game Plus, the Sinner is joined by pyromancers and drops the Old Witch Soul. Given that pyromancy is a heretical art, it's pretty clear what the through line is here. The Sinner is some kind of spiritual echo of Lost Izalith. Shalquar, the talking cat in Majula, all but confirms this. While the item descriptions would say that no one remembers what sin was committed, Shalquar tells us it was the Sinner's attempt to light the flame. Someone in a former kingdom caught her, likely under the influence of this lingering dreg of chaos, and imprisoned both the Sinner and the Chaos bug at the bottom of the prison, tantalizingly close to a primordial bonfire that could bring so much power. The great soul she leaves behind allows you to take that power all for yourself. There's a lot of deeper lore about the potential identity of the Sinner, but that would honestly be too much of a diversion for me, and admittedly even I don't know if I get it for sure. For now, there's a lot more threads to pull on to find the other old lords of Drangleic. That next thread usually leads me through to the Huntsman's Copse and onto Harvest Valley, or Sen's Fortress 2.0 by my measure. Right from the start, we meet Chloanne, a stone trader from a distant land who, like so many others we've met, can't quite remember why she's here. She offers her services to you and eventually moves on to Majula. Hope there's no bleak twist on her story. Harvest Valley and the Earthen Peak beyond are filled to the brim with poison. This land was mined for its ore so deep that a toxic miasma has filled the mines in its crevices, though the work doesn't stop here for the poor souls within its clouds. The Earthen Peak Tower is full of jars of concentrated poison goo, as though the discovery of the poison was not a sign to stop, but a sign to re-enterprise. This whole castle is full of its tricks and traps and ambushes that frustrate. At least you can stop the poison production by burning the windmill to make the final boss of the zone a little bit easier. It's clear that the covetous demon had an unrequited love for the Baneful Queen, serving her even after her form became monstrous. The Baneful Queen is said to have been married to a prince of the Iron Keep, but was banished to Harvest Valley for interfering with the true love he shared with the Princess of the Bastille. It was these two that would communicate via the belfries you found, his Belfry Soul and her Belfry Luna. I find these hints at an ancient love story a really striking contrast for this series. It sort of amazes me that within a game filled with so much misery and despair, it can also play host to an honest-to-God love triangle. The puppet guardians of the Belfries and Belfry Soul and Belfry Luna will literally just tell you about this if you take the time to ask. Talk to NPCs, they're really cool. It's way more interesting than trying to glean the story from just reading descriptions of hats. I mean, look, the hats have lots of lore too, but there's so much good writing in the people that you meet. There's also a lot more of them here. Between the vendors with stories and depressing NPCs' tales, there might be more of an actual sentient population here in Dark Souls 2 than any other game in the series. Anyway, behind the defeated queen lies an elevator which you assume would take you back down and maybe behind the peak to continue on your journey, but instead takes you even further up into nowhere and lets you off at the Iron Keep. This is the moment that really sold me on this world. Souls games have always suggested that a waning age of fire would lead to the borders between worlds becoming blurry, allowing heroes of those other worlds to bleed through. This makes existence a really abstract idea. Is your world even your world? Here, this elevator seemingly transports us to a place that can't exist. A palace of an old king who succumbed to his lust for power in the flame, damning his kingdom and drowning his entire world in magma. The world is guarded by the fierce Elan Knights, students of a master who's long left this world and its dead king. But more on that radical dude later. The old Iron King himself is a frustrating fight, where I usually get blasted into the magma over and over again until I get lucky enough with his moveset that I can just whack his forearms to death. In New Game Plus, he drops the Old King Soul, which is tradable for the Blinding Bolt Miracle. Its description references a god of the sun, making this seem as though he were an echo of Gwyn that never quite made it to the heights of a true lord. Lighting the second primordial bonfire makes me feel like each of these four great ones I'm fighting and the echoes of the lords they represent are where the great soul power amassed and concentrated. That each of these four great souls were all from beings that vied to be strong enough to ascend and potentially link the flames themselves, but came up achingly short. The center attempted to light the flame motivated by chaos, the old Iron King motivated by bullish ambition at the cost of his very physical existence. As it took the four combined Lord Souls to unseat Gwyn and link the flame, so too will it take these four great souls to claim the Throne of Want. But is that what you really came here for? Is this really the only way to cleanse the curse? Clearly it hasn't worked out well for those who have tried. To tread the path of the Monarch is to walk a knife's edge. On one side, the abyss that lurks within man and the chaos that's so enticing. On the other, a flame so powerful only a worthy soul could handle it without being consumed and damned by their own ambition. Is linking the flame actually supposed to save this world, or just condemn it to another cycle of undeath? The Shaded Woods is where we're headed next. A mist-shrouded forest filled with ghosts of a long-settled war. I love how often the camera and lighting provide challenge in this game. It seems annoying at first, but a lot of the early trials of these games can be trivialized once you know enemy placements. Dark Souls 2 is a game that thrives on careful planning and deliberately paced adventuring, not just running straight through. Shaded Woods takes that to an extreme. If you rush in without looking for enemies, you're gonna get cornered by nearly invisible ones that can backstab you. There's some spells and positioning to make them more visible, but your greatest asset is your own willingness to slow down and plan in advance. Tucked away in a corner of the Shaded Woods lies the head of a former warrior whose body was so committed to battle that it kept on fighting after decapitation. The thinking head just gets to sit here now and ponder his life and what's become of it. Vengarl of Farasa is a really fascinating NPC. He's mostly a piece with his body run off and the kingdom he fought for in ruins. Being of Farasa, he's actually got ties to the Crown of the Ivory King DLC and is summonable in a battle way in our future, being that the Ivory King was also once a knight of Farasa. The boss of the Shaded Woods is Scorpioness Najka. If you have the Whispering Ring, you can also find another Scorpion, Tark. He and Najka were once humans betrothed to one another that were transformed into these bodies by an unknown master. Their master isn't specifically named, but it's very likely the Duke of Tseldora found further on in Brightstone Cove. And what have we here? Another tragic love story guarding the way to the bonfire? Fighting Najka may remind you of Quelaag of Izalith, but while Najka is an echo of that design, her origin is of a separate theme if you have the desire to ask about it. Past Najka and beyond the doors of Pharos, Tseldora was once a mining town led by its duke, a man with a fascination for spiders. There's a military camp here guarding the entrance to the town that's now overrun with giant spiders, but none of them are going in. This implies to me that these are Drangleic soldiers sent here just to contain the infestation, not really to stop it. These spiders can latch onto and control people. Deep below in the basement of the largest building in Tseldora waits the Duke's dear Freya, a massive spider that seems to be the source of all the other little ones you've been dealing with. She's grown to insane proportions and has gained a second head from feeding on the corpse of an ancient archdragon. In New Game Plus, Freya drops the old Pale Drake soul, linking her back to Seath Scalus, also a duke by decree of Gwen. The Duke of Tseldora likely focused his fascination on spiders due to Freya's apparent ability to absorb the soul of a lord. That perhaps spiders were some kind of true apex race and Freya was his key to becoming a monarch that could take the throne. So he locked himself in his study, allowing Freya's babies to ravage Brightstone Cove, and eventually himself going hollow. So close to the primordial bonfire, he'd never have the will or the lordly strength to light. The gutter and Black Gulch contain the last of the Lord Souls that we need to find. Deep down the pit of Majula, all the refuse and filth of this world accumulates in the gutter. It's flowing down the goddamn walls. Spires of trash, bodies, and slime are holding up the entire disgusting cave. The level itself is, just to me, a neater version of Blighttown. It at least runs smoothly and doesn't involve the horrible backtracking required to leave the area due to the ability to warp at bonfires. Like No Man's Wharf, bringing torches is almost a necessity to even see your way through. Walls from out from underneath you, and lots of these platforms drop straight off into nothing. Black Gulch is such a short little zone for how funny it is. It's basically one hallway right before a boss that's completely designed to fuck with you with these poison-spitting statues. Lucatiel's down here, and she's almost completely lost herself. She's so desperate to find a cure to this curse. She's so nearly lost that she might even forget the journey she's on. Her story just bums me out so much. I summon her every chance I get just because it seems like that's where she wants to be, fighting against the lords of this world, and my little mind gives her something to be remembered by as she goes hollow. Even if she loses herself, at least I can carry some of that memory with me on my journey. The Rotten is a pretty clear echo of Gravelord Nito, and the Old Dead One's soul confirms it. All that death and pestilence washed down Majula's gutter here to the bottom of the gulch. Eventually all that refuse and decayed hollows form together into an amalgamation of death. He doesn't have the miasma of Nito, but he's become powerful enough to be a contender. Behind him lies a shrine that would take you to Shulva, the Sunken Kingdom in the DLC. This placement is kind of interesting, and there's some theories that link Shulva to Black Gulch here, but we'll get to that later in the DLC section. For now, our only concern is lighting the last primal bonfire. This guy wasn't in the original game, so if you played the OG but not the Scholar version, this giant husk of a tree head is a wild surprise. This new strange being isn't hostile, but he doesn't introduce himself just yet. Other than being surprised we've made it this far, he really only has a question. Do we wish to shed the curse? I mean, kinda, yeah, that's the whole reason I'm here, I think. All this stuff about great souls and seeking the king feels like just an obstacle to that end. The monster tells us there's two options in front of us: inherit the order of the world or destroy it. But only a true monarch can make the choice. He tells us to keep looking for King Vendrick, who almost became a monarch, as he'll surely give us an answer to what we should do. Now that he's gone, all that's left to do is to light the final bonfire and I guess now look for the king. Now that we've gotten enough soul power, a shrine is open to us in the shaded woods that'll lead to Vendrick's home, Drangleic Castle. This castle is one of the coolest inversions I've ever seen the series pull off. You're expecting another Anne Orlando reveal with its grand architecture and sunlit city seen from above. Here, you're at the very foot of the castle as it's pelted by a torrential rain. It's also made of this dark black stone. Honestly, a lot of this image reminds me of Orthanc from Lord of the Rings. This is supposed to be the seat of majesty for this kingdom, and from minute one, something is off here. This is one of the only places in the entire FromSoft catalog that even has rain, and that can't be good. A ghostly chancellor is here to welcome us to the castle. He's got some decent stuff for sale, but what I'm interested in are his memories of the castle and its lord. He tells of Vendrick's story, slaying the giants, learning about souls, creating the golems to build the castle, and of his love for the queen, who came from a faraway land. He suggests that the queen has taken him somewhere. He never comes out right and says it, but this queen of his seems to be a source of unease. Telling of the peace that followed after defeating the giants and ending the war, he says that it's the queen that ultimately brought peace, a peace so deep it was like the dark. Continuing to talk to him, he actually forgets himself and just starts the whole spiel over, asking who we are and why we're here. He's a really strange figure that only deepens the sense that something is really wrong here and that the queen definitely has something to do with it. I absolutely love this whole level. It's got just the right amount of tough enemies, mean tricks, and puzzling rooms and paths. The first time through this room, you can manipulate enemy placement to open all the soul doors and fight the ruined sentinels individually. But if you die and have to come back, you're almost immediately ganked by the entire crowd at once. It's just horrible, and I love it. You make your way up the castle, passing by a very deliberately placed painting of Queen Nishandra in all her beauty. Getting too close starts to build up a curse within you that'll eventually hollow you. Nothing to see there, surely. Fighting your way up and up grants you an audience with that queen. She commends you for your bravery from afar and honestly kind of talks shit on her husband, the king. She recognizes your power in even making it here and suggests that you might make for a fitting monarch where Vendrick failed. It's honestly really creepy that she's kind of flirting with you, but only if her pesky boyfriend weren't around. She knows you're already seeking the king, but suggests that you should kill him to settle things, as there can't be two rulers for one throne. I don't know, man. Bad vibes here. But you continue on anyway. Back down through the castle to get to my second favorite hallway in the game. The lightning crashes outside on the approach to the king, and the tension just builds so perfectly, and okay, wow, way to kill the mood. Alright, back to the... Wait a minute. That's not the king, dude. Who's this? The Looking Glass Knight was once tasked with challenging visitors to the castle, but now in this stagnant age, his only charge is stopping would-be monarchs from finding the runaway lord. I said I wasn't going to get too deep into mechanics here, but this is one of the first boss fights of the game that I really have fun with. The combo of regular swings and the knight harnessing the perpetual storm is really badass. The giant mirror shield will occasionally birth some NPC to join the fight, which has some unsettling implications. It's said to be a mirror to another world, but it feels more like a prison. More on that weirdness a little later. With the zappy guard out of the way, we head further down, away from the castle and into an expansive lake beneath the roots of a great tree. Shrine of Amana. one of the bigger difficulty spikes in the game, and for good reason. This is one of the things meant to keep the kings safely hidden from the world. It's also a place to provide comfort to the dead. Singers throughout the area sing a sweet, sad chant to be a source of peace for the dead. You're trespassing here. You're undead, but this area doesn't really feel like it's for you. It's a shrine to those who have gone to a place that you can't follow. The deformed beings here seem to be hollowed humans that have lived here for so long they've become semi-aquatic. Fireflies swarm around them. These are actually bright bugs. It's said they're found here and comfort the dead. These hollow creatures can't die, but they're as close to death as one can get in this world. The Shrine of Amana is beautiful, it's sad, and it's a gigantic pain in the ass if you're not careful. The Archdrake Knights pack a punch, and there's casters all over, seemingly placed right where you won't look for them. The Archdrakes seem to be from another land called Lindell, and little else is really known about them. Were they tasked by Vendrick to keep others out, or by Nishandra to keep Vendrick hidden away? I lean toward the former. Death seems to be a sort of reverent concept in the world of Dark Souls, as true death is rarely experienced by a lot of the world's inhabitants. After an absolute gauntlet is the Demon of Song, a giant frog creature that was sealed away within the shrine after it gained a taste for human flesh. But with so many of the Milfinito singers having died off, the demon's now roaming free again. It even learned to mimic the song of the Milfinito. Whether it still has the soothing effect on the dead is unknown, but its song draws you into its lair just the same. It's not a very good one here. Honestly, the run back to the boss is harder than the boss itself. Kind of a theme there. Finally, we reach the Undead Crypt. Now we just gotta track down this Vendrick guy. Let's light this checkpoint and get... Oh. You again. This guy, again, doesn't really introduce himself, but he's got more wisdom to share. He asks us to ponder what's driving us to break this curse, telling us how beautiful life is, but how obsession with living corrupts the minds of those who can live forever, like us and the other undead. He even gives hints at the origins of the world and this idea of the first sin committed by Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight. Once, the Lord of Light banished dark and all that stemmed from humanity, and men assumed a fleeting form. These are the roots of our world. Men are props on the stage of life, and no matter how tense, how exquisite, a lie will remain a lie. Young Hollow, knowing this, do you still desire peace? You have the opportunity to answer here, but your response doesn't actually matter. He just wants you to think about your journey and the why of it all. You've been told time and time again that you'll perform this journey without even knowing why, but this guy desperately wants you to think about it, to consider what linking the flame would mean for the whole world. Vendrick, the near-true monarch, is here, and not far off. But what is a king? You, neither born with greatness nor granted it by the fates, what is it that you seek? You cannot even say yourself. Here is a character directly challenging the journey that you think you're on, sowing doubt that you even know what it is that you're doing or whether your driving desires are even your own. A true monarch would decide on their own, but are you? Or are you being used by someone else? Just before the entrance to the crypt proper, someone tells us to not produce light, which is really annoying because I love the torch lighting system in this game, and frankly I can't see a goddamn thing. Talking with this guy is a really fascinating interaction though. He says that he and his kind are finito and were tasked with watching over the undead crypt by the one who gave us the first death, which is pretty obviously implied to be Gravelord Nito. It gives him an almost kindly facet. The dark flowing mass of skulls and death sort of provides peace to those in the undead crypt. The dark is a sacred thing here. Shielded from light, humans are able to exist sort of in their true form. Grave Warden Agdane says that, in the past, humans were one with the dark. The former King of Light, he feared humans, feared that they would usher in an age of dark. How queer, you humans, how you go on, never separating truth from fiction. Here again is someone casting doubt on the idea that Gwyn even knew what he was doing outside of selfish and personal reasons. Is the truth and fiction he's talking about referring to humans not needing to be feared? Is the dark maybe not all that bad? Gwyn thought it was, but prolonging the Age of Fire directly ensured his and the other lord's power would be protected. By shackling humanity to the curse to prolong his age of power, he damned an entire world to a cursed fate. Agdane says you're free to talk to your king if you can make it there. Following through the crypt in the blackest darkness is really interesting. There's rocks to break to get through, but also these bells to accidentally hit that wake up the dead to come and stop you trespassing. It's nothing personal, this is just a peaceful place for the dead to rest and you're intruding. Finally reaching the long hallway leading to Vendrick, the door to that main crypt is guarded by the Cyan Knights that you might have seen around the world, as well as a whole-ass dragon rider. Or you could just run past them to the fog gate. On the other side is Velstadt, the Royal Aegis. Kneeling at the door to his king's resting place, the king's right hand has been down here for what I can only imagine is an actual eternity, quietly keeping watch over his king and waiting for someone like you to give him a chance to smash. He's the very last thing standing in the way. His hammer not only hits like a truck, but it also acts like a chime from which he can cast miracles. A holy man, Vendrick seems to know quite a few, including some dark orb ones, which is a little unsettling. The soul that he drops can be used to create a miracle that implies that he was of an order of warriors that may have served Gwyn in days past, but there's an even more interesting connection for him that I'll touch on much later. For now, what I find most interesting about Velstadt is that his soul item is dark and not bright like most boss souls. This symbol shows when that person has been corrupted by the dark somehow. Only a small handful look like this, and all seem to have been touched by the dark abyss in some way. It's weird that Velstadt could be corrupted but still so loyal to his king so as to stand a stalwart guard for that king for ages, unless he's become more of a warden, making sure the king didn't leave, even if he wanted to. With the king's last defense defeated, it's finally time to take the last steps down to meet the king of this land, and finally get some kind of answer and direction in our journey. Maybe now we can finally stop this curse and be free of this endless cycle of undeath. Down in the deepest levels of the darkest crypt is what's left of Vendrick. But instead of the majestic king who sent war upon the giants, who united the people of Drangleic, a monarch to link the flame, is just another hollow. He's taller than most, but that's all there really is to him. His robes and shield lie crumpled in the corner as he shambles around in circles, not even taking notice of you. He drags his sword behind him, his mind completely lost to time and the curse. Only his crown remains to even suggest who this man is. You can provoke him to fight if you want, but it takes quite a few hits to even get his attention. When you do, it's almost like he's swatting away a fly. Go away, stop bothering me. Leave me be in the dark. The only thing you can take from this room is his ring, the signet of royalty and the key to a few specific areas, one of which is our path forward. There will be no answers from the king. Just leave him to the dark, where maybe he's found something close to peace. The Emerald Herald stands outside the crypt. Did she know of his state? What really is it that told her where we even needed to go? Between this appearance and the one outside Drangleic Castle, one gets the sense that she's not here just to help you like the Firekeepers. There's definitely more to her that she's not letting on about. This entire sequence of the sad and quiet crypt guarded by Nito's wardens, the exciting fight with the stalwart Velstadt, and the discovery of a king lost to the same hollowing that afflicts you is just so sad. This whole set of levels seems to lead up to the ultimate climax of the game, and instead you get this poor shell of a man who won't even notice you, and when he does, he fights you basically on reflex. Spurned by his queen, forgotten by his people, left to rot alone in a prison of his own making, this is one of the most excellent reveals and subversions of the entire FromSoft catalog. With the King's Signet, we can now get through one of the many big locked doors around Drangleic you've probably already seen one or two of. Many of them are guarded by the Cyan Knights that you saw in the crypt. Opening this door in the shaded woods leads to Aldia's Keep and to our good friend, Lucatiel of Mira. Lucatiel has been my closest companion through this journey. If you summoned her and defeat a boss 3 times, she'll give you her sword and armor as a token of gratitude and a plea to remember her by. My name is Lucatiel. I beg of you, remember my name, for I may not myself. This is the last we'll see of Lucatiel. Aside from a summon during a DLC boss, she's gone her separate way from the keep. I hope she finds the cure she's looking for. These are the sorts of people the journey is really for. Losing souls over and over again, the player's able to resist hollowing as long as they keep pressing forward. But Lucatiel? Who knows? She's stronger than most we've met up to this point, but how strong would anyone be in the face of an eternal, undying curse? Just inside the front doors of the keep, you're invaded by Aslatiel of Mira, one of the greatest swordsmen in the kingdom of Mira and older brother to Lucatiel. He left the kingdom long ago, and Lucatiel always thought it was because he was secretly afflicted with the undead curse. He made it this far, to the keep of Aldia the Scholar, who in his time researched many things including the undead curse and the sins committed by Gwyn. To his credit, he came so close to where he probably thought the answers were here, but the curse took him just as it takes everyone else. Very, very rarely, he'll drop his old sword. I don't have footage of that here because it's just a super rare drop. It's similar to the Mira Greatsword given by Lucatiel, but with a distinct difference. That being his sword has a tiny message inscribed on the blade, a promise to someone special. I think this inscription and its promise are for his younger sister Lucatiel, that he took on this journey for her sake, knowing the same undead curse would eventually come for her. He likely hoped that the inscribed promise would remind him of his duty to his family even when he lost himself, but we know that he failed. The only nice thing here is that at least Lucatiel didn't have to see her brother turned hollow like this. Putting down Aslatiel is a mercy to them both. Aldia's Keep Beyond is a testament to the horrors of pursuing knowledge and experimentation. There's a guy locked away here that I do not have time to deal with. There's mirrors here that look like the origins of the Looking Glass Knight's shield, some of them having prisoners inside that break out just to fight you. The skeleton of a dragon is laid across the grand staircase. Better not wake him up. At the top of the staircase is a gigantic caged basilisk, and beyond are even more of the creatures you've seen on your journey. Lots of ogres, some more basilisks, even a mimic's up there. Did this Aldia create the mimics, or is he just studying them? There's some dragon acolytes here in Aldia's labs, and a pit of corrosive acid he's trapped some dogs in. Seems bad, man. This guy's fucked. Beyond the bunch of ogres is the boss, the Guardian Dragon. Okay, it's actually a wyvern, not a dragon. Okay. He's trapped in a massive cage behind the keep. It seems almost tragic to kill such a majestic beast in a cage, but so it goes. Aldia must have been researching dragons for some reason. Behind the dragon is another elevator going further up. The views here are just stunning. Giant rock spires shoot up into the sky, and this elevator is attached to one of them. The last elevator I took up was pretty cool, so this should be neat too. Well, hold on to your butts, because up here is the Dragon Eyrie. Again, these aren't dragons, they're wyverns. But it's still just awesome to see so many at once. They're flying all around like they own the place, and I guess they do. They curl up sleeping next to clutches of eggs. Do not break these or get ready for a very bad time. Across a particularly windy and rickety bridge is the way to the Dragon Shrine. Oh, look, a checkpoint. I better... Oh, this fucking guy again. This interaction actually has some of my favorite quotes in the game. Now that you know the truth about Vendrick, you've seen the Queen, and you've come to the foot of dragons, the creature has this to say. Peace grants men the illusion of life. Shackled by falsehoods, they yearn for love, unaware of its grand illusion, until the curse touches their flesh. We are bound by this yoke, as true of the dark that churns within men. All men trust fully the illusion of life, but is this so wrong? A construction, a facade, and yet a world full of warmth and resplendence. Young Hollow, are you intent on shattering the yoke, spoiling this wonderful falsehood? This is a big departure from the words he had for you in the crypt. There he admonished Gwyn, his sin, and the curse perpetuated by the cycle of linking the flame. A lie will remain a lie after all, but here he seems to consider it as not all bad. This lie, this life we have, is all that most people have in the world. An age of dark would shatter the falsehood so many cling to as the only thing they have in this world. All the joy of living and the love we experience is within this shell of falsehood, but it's still what we experience. The warmth we feel in a positive sense would also be stripped away. Is truth, however painful, worth more than a lie, however peaceful and beautiful? Would you allow humanity to exist in ignorant bliss, or would you bring them kicking and screaming into the unknown future? Regardless of your answer, the creature once again only has one thing to say. Your answer isn't actually important to him, he just wants you to really be sure of what you want. He continues, I am Aldea. I sought to shed the yoke of fate, but failed. Now, I only await an answer. Seek the throne. Seek light, dark, and what lies beyond. So this is the guy. This is the scholar Aldea. He was brother to King Vendrick. They were both scholars of a sort, actually. Vendrick studied souls as a means to circumvent linking the flame, and Aldea studied other forms of life for mostly the same end. Aldea seems to have tried tampering with the primordial bonfires themselves, which have now consumed him and made him a part of it. He only seems to appear at bonfires or where the power of the first flame gathers. In his attempt to free himself of the shackles of fate, he just imprisoned himself further. And up we go into the Dragon Shrine. You have to fight multiple souped-up versions of the old knights from Heidi's Tower. If you try to run past them, all these dragon guys will try to gank you. This is a test of strength and honor. Cowards don't belong in the halls of dragons. This gauntlet culminates in a single fight with a super aggressive dragon knight that will regularly wreck my shit, but his comrades watch on, honoring the duel. At the top of the shrine, at the top of the world itself, is the ancient dragon. The dragon speaks to you directly into your mind, talking about the shifting murk, and gives you the ashen mist heart. This will allow you to peer into the memories of certain withered beings. You can fight him, but that just doesn't seem right. It seems mean. The fight is also really not worth your time. If you did fight and beat him, though, you'd see he drops a giant soul when he's killed. This, along with a few extra clues, suggests the dragon isn't even a dragon at all. The bone shields dropped by acolytes in Aldea's keep suggest that Aldea was trying to recreate a dragon. Nishandra and Shalquar both actually are aware of the existence of the ancient dragon and its falseness. Nishandra specifically will try to dissuade you from even using the Ashen Mist Heart, as though she's wary of what you might find hidden away in certain memories. The main memories to find and pursue are those of the fallen giants that have become trees themselves. Certain giant trees that now are surrounded by fireflies seen in the Shrine of Amana. The Mist Heart lets you relive the final moments of these giants during their siege on Drangleic in the war that Vendrick started. 2 of these memories are just kind of small levels with some basic loot and a handful of enemies. There's always a dying giant towards the end that grants you a giant soul before kicking you out of the memory. This really cool part of this within the memory of Jay. In this memory, you get to traverse through the zone where you fought the Pursuer, even getting to see how the destroyed statue shaped the arena. At the end of the rampart is the Giant Lord. Not only does the Giant Lord look distinct from the other giants, being tall and slender rather than sort of stocky, Y shapes like most of the other ones, but this guy kind of resembles the last giant you fought way at the beginning of the game. When he fell to you here, he became a prisoner for centuries, the last of his kind, forced to live down in the deepest dungeon of the fort. He even remembers falling to you. It's kind of a weird circular time thing. I've already demonstrated that we can talk briefly to the people within the memory, and the soldier we spoke with didn't recognize us, so we must be appearing to these people as ourselves. Presumably, the giant would probably hate any of his human captors regardless of their identity, but meaning the last giant for the boss fight at the very beginning, he starts to just lose himself to a frenzy and rips himself up from where he sat impaled for years. He knows us, and we kill him again. Defeating the giant lord in the memory grants us the giant's kinship, an item that will basically give us the power to take the throne of want and link the flame. This item description was one of many changed with this edition of the game, reading, "The flames roar, but will soon begin to fade, and only a worthy heir might burnish their light. What is it truly a claimant of the throne should desire?" This feels like something Aldia would say to us. To me, it feels like the player continuing to doubt whether linking the flame is the right thing to do. We're considering our options just like Aldia asked of us. The giant's kinship was what Nishander was trying to get the king to claim when he made war on the giants. Now you have it. You could go right to the end, but there's still a few things the Ashen Mistheart can show us. Back in the depths of Celadora, a corpse of a dragon hangs over the home of Freya. This is another memory you can enter, albeit a brief one. You're transported to the world when it was shrouded in the primordial fog during the age of the everlasting dragons, or more likely near its end. The dragon whose memories you entered is already dead, likely from the war with the Lord of Light. You can claim its soul of the ancient dragon, but that's all there really is here besides rock and fog. It's a really sad look at such a majestic avatar of nature. This dragon is dead, and its world balance is dying along with it, but there's nothing we can do for it now. The giant souls obtained through the giant's memories, including a secret final set of giants deep in Black Gulch, allow you to fight the hollowed body of Vendrick more effectively. Every giant soul you carry reduces Vendrick's damage negation by half, making the fight sort of even and at least actually possible. The fight is kind of boring, but it's clear that Vendrick's body remembers the warrior's swing. His sword sweeps out in the blink of an eye. The moves aren't complicated, but losing focus for like a second is enough to get walloped. But that's it for the body of old Vendrick. Or is it? Now that you have the Ashen Mistheart, you notice those same fireflies swarming around Vendrick's armor and shield. Here in the crypt is another memory that takes you back in time to before Vendrick's hollowing, when he first committed himself to the crypt and its darkness. Here he sits, alone, Velstadt keeping guard outside. He acknowledges you as the Seeker of Fire and Coveter of the Throne, recognizing you. He introduces himself and says, "As flame rises, so does it fade. Such is the way of things. Do you intend to link the fire? Then you must first take the throne. Prove your worth. Find the ancient crowns. Seek adversity, and they will be yours, and your wishes granted." Well, that's cryptic as shit, but Vendrick is referring to the expansions here. 3 other kingdoms with 3 separate crowns of would-be monarchs of ages past. With only the throne here in Drangleic to claim, it feels like it might be worth investigating what Vendrick is referring to with these other kingdoms before we attempt to take our own. What was Vendrick so afraid of? What happened to these other kingdoms? The Lost Crown DLCs were released in quick succession in 2014, and to me they kind of exist as a full package and companion to Dark Souls 2 when compared together. I think they're best enjoyed if played right before the main game's climax and not after. The first of the expansions is the Crown of the Sunken King, accessed by going to that shrine by the boss arena of the Rotten we talked about earlier. The Sunken King ruled the kingdom of Sholva deep underground. Each of these DLCs starts with a fantastic view of the castle or kingdom you've entered. FromSoft really does nail these vistas, don't they? The whole kingdom here seems to be just comprised of these green stone soldiers. They don't seem to even really be alive, and their being of stone makes them really hard to stagger. The sunken city of Sholva, and all the DLC areas for that matter, is a fantastic puzzle box of a city to navigate. There's tons of hidden corners and paths with loot to find, including some really great level-changing dynamics involving shooting areas with a bow, something the series really hasn't done yet, and honestly never really tries again in this way in the future. You have to make your way all the way down this main castle, fighting spectral soldiers and dark sorceresses just to get to the bottom. Put a stone in this thing here and make your way all the way back up, and still, not a single living soul can tell you what the fuck is even going on here. Particularly where the dragonstone is used near the layer of the Imperfect, there's a bunch of the half-dragon beings down here called the Imperfect. They resemble the literal half of a dragon creatures of Lost Izalith, but here they've grown like human teeth? Or maybe that of the primordial serpents? They're just terrible. I hate these guys. They're so gross looking, and there's no boss down here anyway, so let's just take some shit and go. I don't want to have to look at them. With the Dragonstone in place, we can enter the main sanctum and make our way down to the bottom, listening to a soft singing like that of Shrine of Amana. There's some Drake Blood Knights to fight with their cool-ass armor that I keep forgetting to go back and get. Maybe they revere the dragon we saw earlier. Did they come here seeking him out? Reaching the bottom of the sanctum causes the singing to stop. Beyond the fog wall is something spooky. Alana, the squalid queen. This horrifying creature says you're unworthy of the mire and starts throwing fireballs at us. She summons the dead in the form of skeletons, making this fight really unfair if you didn't bring help, but she's only getting started. She'll mainly hang back and use magic and fire to assault you while the summons get in close. Her scariest summon, though, is a corrupted avatar of Belstad? Something sort of clicked with me here. This land seemed to be a very religious society. Belstad is seemingly a warrior cleric type, utilizing miracles in battle. Was Belstad from here? It's been suggested that he came from a faraway land, but could it have been this one? His armor can't be that common, and that hammer is just too iconic. How else would Alana know about this guy? As an aside here, I want to put an additional note on the difficulty of this encounter. I think the entire expansion up to this point has prepared you to deal with this kind of fight as a finale. The initial areas have you fighting the melee soldiers with others behind using bows. The sanctum itself has you fighting spectral knights with dark casters placed in harder to reach places. The knights even have an additional puzzle element of needing to break their crypts to make them corporeal and therefore easier to hurt. Initially, I thought a fight where one boss summons other melee enemies might be unfair and summoning is the right call here, but I think I'm honestly going to walk back that idea. I think the preceding combat encounters in the main levels give you enough warning and practice that fighting a caster and different melee enemies in this single boss fight is actually awesome. I love these layering attacks, and the fight feels surprisingly fair for how it looks when you first step through the fog door. Finally putting Alana to rest, we can see this sculpture that sort of tells us the story of this city. The founders of the city discovered a dragon asleep all alone down here. Being that dragons are an extremely rare and powerful being, they decided to worship it, building an entire city in its honor and revering it like a god. And then Alana came along. Her soul names her as a child of dark and an augur of wrath. It sounded like Alana wanted to use the source of the dragon's power to elevate herself to that of a monarch, manipulating the king from the shadows. Sound familiar? But for her efforts, what became of that city? What happened to the king and his people? Where's the dragon? Thankfully, Sin the slumbering dragon is like 100 feet that way with its answers, or fireballs. Mostly fireballs. Oh, and the fire is also poison. Oh, and the fire that's also poison also breaks all of your shit. Aside from all that, I really like fighting Sin. As always, the fight introduction is just so cool. There's a massive spear sticking out of the dragon with a greenish wound, suggesting that the poison is coming from within the dragon and not from the outside. I like that he has the ability to fly, but also seems really constrained by the fact that, yeah, we're underground, we're inside. You can only take a few 100-yard lunges. In the arena, there's a ring belonging to some dude named Jorg. Maybe he's the guy that tried to kill the dragon. Oh look, here's an answer to that exact question in The Soul of the Dragon. The king erected a magnificent city, and the dragon slept soundly, until Sir Jorg disturbed it with a single great strike, and the dragon could bear its store of poison no longer. The rain of death toppled the city, but restored the dragon's purity. So yeah, way to fuck that all up, Jorg. Those Drake Blood Knights we fought earlier followed Jorg, and worshipped specifically the blood of the dragon, thinking it would bring them power and probably some form of immortality. My guess is that Alana's push of wanting to use the dragon for power was a little too effective in convincing people of the potential for a dragon's power. Jorg and his Drakeblood Knights betrayed and killed the king and tried to take the dragon for themselves. By waking the dragon and releasing its poison within its own body, they doomed the entire kingdom. Only Alana was left here to fester within her own failure. Now she has to sing to keep the dragon sleeping peacefully so that maybe one day she can take that power she coveted so strongly. Another love story tainted by the abyss and left in the cold dark. Defeating Sin gives the first of the 3 old crowns, and we're done here. Oh, yeah. So, there's an optional boss down here. The infamous Grave Robber Gank Fight Squad. Fuck these guys. Fuck the run-up to the fight, fuck the janky arena, and fuck this Havel clone in particular. I got these guys on my first try this time, but I almost didn't bother because there's no real point to this fight. I just wanted to include it here so that no haters would be able to say I skipped it. You'll see later how that attitude got me into some really big fucking trouble. Before that trouble though, let's talk about what's likely my favorite area in the whole game within the Crown of the Old Iron King DLC, the Broom Tower. Unlike the other 2 DLCs, this one is clearly about a guy we've sort of already heard about. We've already even gotten his soul and fought what became of him in the lava ocean of the Iron Keep. Well, he didn't always live in his Iron Keep. The Old Iron King got that name here, in a vast land with power hidden beneath the earth. Here, the yet unestablished king had help from a wandering swordsman, Alan, in taking control of this land. Alan taught the king his eastern style of sword fighting. This knowledge was passed down to the king's knights and allowed the to-be king to be able to conquer this kingdom of Ven. The prince took control of this land at great personal cost, but in this he also became enamored with the princess of Ven. Though he was married, I assume, to the Queen Mytha. Gonna be honest here, the Alkin and Ven lore is kinda confusing, especially with the complications brought to light by this DLC. I'm probably not the best source for that specific piece of the Dark Souls 2 puzzle, but I know there's sources out there of people who have picked this specific pickle apart way deeper than I ever could. Once in control of the Kingdom of Ven, the Old Iron King found the Scorching Iron Scepter, a rod of perpetual heat and flame that he could use to give life to iron and mold it as he pleases. He built the massive broom tower to forge this living iron and powered it using the scepter. The tower literally comes alive with its power. Alongside the broom tower, the newly crowned Iron King created a keep fully out of this living iron with the aim of expanding his kingdom and deepening his influence. He met Aegil, the pyromancer, who showed him even more ways to utilize the power of flame. The Iron King is lustful for even more power. At this height of his reign, Alan just decided to leave. His reasons aren't stated directly. Maybe he's upset with the king and his blasphemous transgressions, as, again, pyromancy is a heresy. Maybe he just saw that he helped the king as much as he could and decided to find a new path. Either way, he left. The king would name his knights after his old friends who would guard his keep forever. In his insatiable search for power, the Iron King eventually damned himself. The pyromancer Aegil taught the king how to imbue golems with life, and so he created the Iron Soldiers and the Smelter Demon. That demon, though, just proved too powerful, as the flame was a heretical one implied by the name Demon. The demon struck down the king almost instantly, casting him into the lava that had grown around this city. There at the bottom of the molten sea, he seemingly found the soul of Gwyn, perhaps. At least that's what's implied by the old king's soul. The soul of the old Iron King became fused with this long-lost fragment of power, and around his soul power grew the demonic body you've already known so well. With the king presumably destroyed for all intents and purposes, the broom tower slowly burned out, the golems inside standing silent guard over a tower of ash. It's around this time that a woman from a faraway land arrived at the tower, looking for the long-gone king. Finding the tower empty and covered in ash, this daughter of the abyss, Nadalia, decided that rather than seek out a new king and the new people, that she would become one with this tower and the ash that it contained. She'd already failed in her mission to seek out a potential monarch. The king she sought was dead, and with so few even remotely capable of replacing him, what else could she do? She went to the bottom of the tower and abandoned her physical form to fully spread throughout the tower in the form of the ashen idols. These idols would provide comfort and strength to the golems that contained the twisted souls. Throughout the tower, at least on the outside, you can see what looks like burned bodies in the ash heaps. They blow out in a puff when you step on them, but some of them contain pretty large souls. These were people once, the people of the Iron King. Is it these souls that now inhabit the golems? Did Nadalia extract the souls from the ash and put them inside the golems to keep her company? I don't know, to be honest, but something here wiped out the people of this land, just like with Shulva. Aside from the mutated form of the Ashen Idols, there's only one truly alive being in the tower. Down in the lowermost floor, in a dome of ash protected by multiple Ashen Idols, is the Fume Knight. Raim, a former Knight of Vendrick at a level equivalent to Velstadt and just as fiercely loyal. The Fume Knight and Velstadt never got along, to put it mildly. They had a clash and Velstadt came out on top. It's not directly said what they clashed about, but my theory was that Raim saw through the manipulations of Nishandra and tried to warn the king. Velstadt, seemingly already corrupted by his time near Olana in the kingdom of Shulva, sided with the Dark without necessarily making that known. By defeating Raim, Velstadt indirectly ensured nothing would come between Vendrick and Nishandra. Exiled by the king, Raim would lay down his shield and walk the land in search of more power. When he reached the Broom Tower, he found a source of comfort in the Bride of Ash. She became sort of a mother figure to him, haunting his sword and becoming a new one made entirely of hardened black ash for him to channel the power of the Broom Tower directly through. The Fume Knight would remain down here for who knows how long, until you arrive. Comforting mother as she is, Nadalia's idols placed outside the Ash Dome will heal the Fume Knight if he gets close, making this already tough fight nearly impossible. The Knight wields his two swords, old and new, and his combos have the strength of the Abyss behind them. Damage him enough, and he discards his old steel sword and just carries his Fume Greatsword, imbuing it with fire for a super annoying sweep attack that I can't seem to fully learn the timing of. He's super aggressive in this phase. Where in Phase 1, he seems to fight honorably, probably because he thinks he can easily beat you. In Phase 2, it's a fight for survival, and also the defense of his mother. If you enter the fight wearing the Helm of Velstadt, Raim will instantly enter Phase 2. He knows Velstadt, and he isn't going to waste his time toying around. He'll use all the power he can muster against this fucking guy. Wearing the helm is a great way to learn the Phase 2 moves, as getting there can be a challenge that instantly kills you. The moveset is simpler, but I've always found that Phase 1 isn't as hard, so I don't mind fighting through it. This boss is the deadliest in Dark Souls 2 and probably the whole series as a whole. According to developer data, he wins 93% of his fights against players, and honestly, I get it. I had a heck of a time against him years ago and even died to him a few times this go around. His swings are so deliberately timed, it's like they're orchestrated to make you think you're safe when you're not. That aforementioned flaming sweep is something I never really learned how to dodge correctly every single time. It's so slow that most of the time I just decide I had to run away with it to be safe. This guy is a powerhouse. It also bears some thought that this idea of slower, deliberate swings reminds me a lot of the design of Elden Ring bosses. The Fume Knight carries this idea of needing to learn the timing and direction of an attack and not just reacting to a swing of a sword. That design is basically every main boss in Elden Ring, and I think a lot of that type of challenge was born here in the Broom Tower. Finally overcoming this ultimate challenge leads you somehow further down just a bit to see what's left of the corporeal form of the Bride of Ash. You gain the crown, a fragment of her soul, and the crown of the old Iron King. The only thing the Bride of Ash found here left of the king she sought, and so we're done, right? Well, no. If the last DLC wasn't a clue, there's an additional boss here, but one that's thematically way more interesting than the Gank Squad. Following the Living Tower further and further up leads to the armor and sword of a samurai. You can actually see these right below the throne when you initially get to the Broom Tower in a neat little twist. But now, with the Fume Knight defeated and the Iron King's crown claimed, you can enter the memory of the old Iron King. What comes up next is the second most frustrating zone of the entire game for me, more so than the Cave of the Dead, more so than all the dark chasms in Black Gulch. This set of two hallways filled with Alam Knights and Flame Lizards just... just fucking sucks. The architecture isn't interesting. It feels like a bad custom map from Foundry in Halo 3. You're in a memory, so time is limited, but if you don't tiptoe through the place taking out each enemy, you're just gonna die and get kicked out and have to start it all over anyway. So, I summoned help. I don't care, this isn't fun, I just want to be done with this nonsense and never come back. If you have a problem with that, whatever. Getting to the boss is thematically interesting, but is also not my favorite fight by any stretch of the word. You finally come face to face with the famous Sir Alan. Since this is the memory of the Old Iron King, I kind of take this to mean that we're in the shoes of the Old Iron King, finding Alan sometime after he left the Iron Keep. I think the Old Iron King sought out Alan and fought him over his betrayal, eventually slaying the one who was arguably most responsible for that king's rise to power. He'd go back to his keep, placing the arms of his friend in reverence in the Broom Tower, and would soon succumb to his own hubris. The actual fight is a really strange departure from the rest of the game in a lot of annoying ways. Alan strikes faster than a lot of Souls enemies, locking you into combos with his giant sword. He's got a dashing attack that I swear has a different wind-up timing every time he does it. He'll back up, assume this stance for like half a second or a quarter of a second or maybe longer, then snaps out at you with this upward strike. You can't react to the stance, you have to react to the dash. And since that dash can cover a different distance depending on how you're positioned, it'll be a different dodge timing every time. He also has multiple stab attacks, and it's really hard to tell which one he's doing. Sometimes he'll lunge forward and it'll stab you, just dealing a ton of damage, and I swear it's not a single fluid lunge, because multiple times I would think I'm outside of the range for the strike, and then he moves like just a little extra inch just to poke me with the tip of his sword and deal full damage. Other times his lunge gets a little bit of charge up before he lashes out, making dodge timing again really hard to read. And this, right here, is one of the moments that gets memed into oblivion. I see videos weekly of players getting teleported onto the end of his sword for huge damage and an attack that gives Alan a buff using your fucking blood. For you see, this isn't a stab attack, it's a grab attack. Grab attacks are ones that have to be avoided uniquely in this series. Basically, in the windup, the entire body of the enemy becomes a damage zone. If you touch it at all in this state, the grab lands. But this strike is telegraphed like a sword lunge. The stance Alan is in, combined with the limited directional dodging when you're locked on, mean you'll almost always be touching him somewhere, and he stays in this stance long after the lunge finishes. So the grab will connect and you'll be teleported onto the sword for the animation to play out. There's no way around this. This fucking sucks. This is bad telegraphing, it's bad move design. If it were like Melania's grab in Elden Ring, where she grabs you and then stabs you, I'd be fine. As it is, these couple of moves never feel good to fight against. In this one instance, I'll grant it to the haters. Just this once, Dark Souls 2 is kinda bad. I'm fighting what should be part of the emotional core of the DLC, and all I've been able to think about are these stabs and how they prove certain types of critics right. Worse, I'm annoyed by it too. It's the main reason that I summoned for this fight. I beat the Fume Knight all by my lonesome because it was a fun duel. This isn't fun, I just want it to be over. With Alan defeated, we find an offshoot room containing a single chair. A modest seat for a modest swordsman who chose not to be a part of a mighty kingdom. You can find the final smelter wedge here that lets you claim the full soul of Nadalia. We see Nadalia's soul is darkened, indicating her to be a daughter of the Abyss, and it also names her the Dogger of Solitude. Alan's soul is interesting. It can be used to create the bewitched Alan sword. It's said to have a mystical allure, and I think this sword and the version we see beside the armor of the Broom Tower actually contains his soul. I think the Old Iron King, with the knowledge of the soul that led him to the creation of golems, put Alan's soul inside of his sword after killing him. This armor we find in the Broom Tower isn't placed here in reverence, it's a prison. It's a reminder that even the most powerful would do well not to cross the Old Iron King. Maybe it's defeating Alan in this memory, but we freed him. Maybe by forging his soul into his sword, we're simply imprisoning him again. But maybe that's less of a punishment? as at least now Olan can continue his wandering. With the crown of the king and the soul of his former friend, we leave the Broom Tower behind us. The third and final DLC is the Crown of the Ivory King. We're dropped just outside the walls of a massive kingdom with the doors bursting out with icy tendrils. A faraway voice tells us to keep away, but let's be honest, when have I ever listened to that advice? Inside the walls is the kingdom of Lois that's covered in a thick blizzard. The whole city's blanketed in snow, and a lot of places and loot are locked away by the cold. Few creatures are even alive here, and most of them are completely made of ice. I love this labyrinth level because seeing all these blocked paths and loot lets you make mental notes to return here if anything is going to get rid of all that ice later on. Eventually, you come up to a beacon where you can claim an Eye of the Priestess. Wonder what that's for. Seeing on the things? Weird. Anyway, you continue on and follow the path to the left of the main door that you came through in the beginning, where again, that same voice is telling you to keep away. That just makes me want to go in even more. What's that? Who's Ava? Who cares? Anyway, that's Ava. The king's pet was set here to be the final line of defense to keep intruders out of the cathedral. The fight's pretty fun when you remember the kind of janky hitboxes and learn to just deal with how bad the Dark Souls camera is at compensating for enemy size. It's not so bad. Ava's soul confirms that the king's pet was charged with guarding the cathedral, and the king's beloved child of Dark? Uh-oh. But inside is another surprise. This woman, presumably a child of Dark, speaks to us really kindly. It could be a ruse, but she seems genuinely glad we're here and only wants her king to be safe. Alsana willingly tells us the story of the kingdom, how the Ivory King discovered chaos buried here under the city and vowed to keep it contained with Alsana as his source of prayer and oracle. The king loved this woman, and through that love caused her to choose to abandon her supposed mission to seek the throne. She devoted herself to him and aided him in this mission to quell the old chaos. Their efforts failed, though, and the Ivory King was forced to sacrifice himself to seal the chaos and the city as a whole. That sealing of the chaos is why the entire land is blanketed in snow and ice. It's frozen both physically and metaphysically. Time cannot progress here unless the old chaos get out. Alsana begs you to help her and free her king, to rid this land of the chaos. When you agree, she quells the winds that made it so hard to see, partially allowing some of the ice in the kingdom to dissipate. She opens the door to chaos, and you can jump right down in and get to business if you want. But she also suggests there may be other knights in the kingdom that could aid your cause. Well, hey, I love summoning, so I love this too. Going back through Lois now that the blizzard is gone, this place is genuinely gorgeous. It might be the most beautiful zone in the game, at least to me, maybe only rivaled by Shrine of Amana or the stark atmospheric change of Drangleic Castle. One specific part of the area gives such a wondrous view of the kingdom that was lost here. Unlike the other expansion areas, this one clearly had a community and a society here. There's houses and even whole other cathedrals. One in the distance looks so deliberately designed, I thought I'd be headed there for a side boss the first time I saw it. This icy kingdom is just a treat to behold. With some of the ice gone, there's more loot to find and crevices to search, but also more enemies. It's clear that whatever soul magic led to the creation of golems also functions here. Spread throughout the city and locked away are several of the king's most loyal Lois Knights. They've been waiting for him to return to the chaos, but now that you're here and the winds are gone, they know what the queen has charged you with. They silently disappear and await you in the cathedral. Now that I mentioned how awesome this level is, let me temper that with my official most hated zone in the game. It's probably the biggest secret of the secret DLC areas, requiring you ride a coffin from this bonfire. It wouldn't be super intuitive to find back in the day, but I've played Elden Ring. Open coffins are basically the closest thing we get to trains in this universe. Riding this one takes you to the frigid outskirts. The outskirts are a massive zone with next to nothing in the way of interesting encounters and with a blowing blizzard that I swear Alsana said she took care of. Within the blizzard, you get ambushed multiple times by 1 to 3 crystal reindeer that barely stagger at all and can shoot lightning at you. The boss at the end is just Ava again, but now double. Once again, I summoned here. Worse, I summoned a whole ass adventure party because this runback regularly killed me, and it was so long and frankly asinine that I just wanted it to be done. Having 2 giant tigers to fight instead of 1 isn't an interesting challenge, it's a bad gimmick. And the only difference here is that one of the big cats gets really angry and does even more damage and tanks your hits. This isn't fun. For a secret area, this has next to nothing to offer of lore except to let you know that these 2 cats were tasked by the king to kill exiles from the city as a mercy. Yeah, I got that. They've been doing that to me for like 2 hours if the reindeer didn't whoop my ass first. Okay, rant over. I wanted to get that negative stuff out of the way here because everything about the ending of this expansion is honestly fantastic. Returning to the cathedral, and the knights are just waiting for you at the mouth of Chaos Portal, including a 4th knight that didn't need freeing because he was already waiting here. Now there's a good lad. Passing through the fog gate, we plunge deep down into the coolest boss arena in the whole dang game, the Old Chaos. This is the reformed chaos created by the witches of Izalith in the Age of Lords. Without the bed of chaos keeping it somewhat in check, it's been allowed to fester down here. The writhing mass of fire seems to collect behind the platform and sink down into a singularity. This rampant chaos won't just consume Elian Lois, it'll likely consume the whole world if we don't stop it here. With our Frog Knight pals in tow, we enter the arena and the gates at the edges here light up. From each of the doors steps a knight of Elian Lois, charred black by the fires of chaos that consumed them. Like Gwyn's Black Knights, these poor dudes were burned from the inside, their twisted souls fused to their armor to be the defenders of chaos. This prelude to the fight is such a cool brawl. All of your knights versus the Knights of Chaos. One by one, your knights channel the power of Elsana's ice and seal each gate, sacrificing themselves in the process. Thankfully, if you saved all 4 knights, 1 should still be left as backup to fight whatever is next. A massive stone gateway forms against the backdrop of undulating chaos. From this portal steps the avatar of the reborn chaos itself, the burnt Ivory King. The ruler of this land, who sacrificed his mortal shell to seal away the chaos, is now corrupted by it and forced to fight on its behalf. The Ivory King is my favorite boss in the whole game, full stop. He's just such a fluid swordsman. This corrupted form groans and gurgles with the chaos forcing his every movement, but the warrior of Farasa that conquered this land is still on display here. He can imbue his sword with the magic used to seal this land, making his swipes have an incredible range, and he can create the icicles that Elsana used to seal the chaos against you. Thanks for teaching him that one. He dashes and leaps all over the arena. With that extra magical range, he's legitimately able to wombo combo you down to almost nothing, and he looks damn fine in the process. Ultimately though, he's no match for my axe and massive Estus supply. We finally put the Burnt King to rest, just like the Oracle asked of us. Back up top, we can have a new conversation with Elsana. She basically spills the beans on her whole existence and that of her sisters. She tells us her father was of the Abyss and passed long ago. That at the death of Manus, the dark shattered into several pieces, and one of those pieces became her. Elsana was the incarnation of the fear within Manus. She sought the king of this land to sustain herself and to smother those fears, but she recognizes now that her king likely knew what she was and provided comfort anyway. That comfort was what broke her from the supposed mandate of the Abyss and is why she stayed here, protecting his kingdom and awaiting his return, as long as it took. Elsana will now give you another task. There were lots of other knights that went down to the chaos with the Ivory King, and their souls are still down there. Free them, as you did the king. This means you can go back down to the old chaos and fight the charred Lice Knights to your heart's content. She wants a total of 50 souls to consider the knights freed. Getting more and more souls also unlocks more dialogue and the chance to meet her in person. She'll tell you there's others like her, which, yeah, I kinda already know. These sisters have been nothing but trouble for me, honestly. But here, Elsana is proof that the dark isn't wholly bad. She's of the dark, and look at what she was able to hold back and protect. Her sisters may not be able to be swayed, but maybe the dark can find a home and a place to exist without this perception that it's evil. At least it has in this cold, dark, yet very gentle place. With the crowns of the would-be monarchs in hand, we return to Drangleic. We need to see Vendrick in his memory again, but there's one crown that we haven't found. The crown of Vendrick himself. Buried in a separate crypt in the Shrine of Amana, tucked away in a quiet little cave, is a single small chair. This chair holds the soul and the crown of the king. Here, Vendrick shed his soul and his crown to hide them both from Nishandra. At least part of him could see what she was after. With her knowing that she would send others to the crypt, he hid a separate part of himself away in the shrine to try and protect his land, even in his cowardly act. Vendrick has some really interesting commentary as you find more and more crowns. I'd like to recite some of that conversation here, and I'll try to paraphrase a bit where I can. Seeker of fire, conqueror of dark, I too sought fire once. With fire they say a true king can harness the curse. A lie, but I knew no better. Seeker of fire, you know not the depths of dark within you. It grows deeper still, the more flame you covet. I am king of this wretched, unraveled kingdom. I subdued the giants and claimed their strength so that I might step closer to the fire. Drangleic will fall, the fire will fade, and the souls of old will re-emerge. With dark unshackled, a curse will be upon us, and men will take their true shape. The abyss once had form, but then dissipated, and yet traces of its existence endured. Each fragment, thirsting for power, spread dark with no relent. My dear Chandra was once such a fragment, a feeble, tiny thing that thirsted for power more than any other, driven by insatiable lust for a worthy vessel. Fire came to be, and with it disparity, heat and cold, life and death, light and dark. Dark was seen as a curse. Shadow is not cast but born of fire, and the brighter the flame, the deeper the shadow. Inherit fire and harness the dark. Such is the calling of a true leader. One day, fire will fade, and the dark will become a curse. Men will be free from death, left to wander eternally. Dark will again be ours, and in our true shape, we can bury the false legends of yore. Only, is this our only choice? Seeker of fire, coveter of the throne, seek strength. The rest will follow. Here, hidden away in his own memory, Vendrick really, truly understands the world. He clearly sees Gwyn's discovery of fire as a mistake, that the disparity brought on by the discovery of fire plunged the world into a never-ending cycle of light and dark. That the stronger a flame gets, so too does the dark become stronger to meet it. His hiding himself away is such a flat refusal to participate in this cycle. With his scholar brother lost and his kingdom in ruins, he no longer sees himself as even capable of making that decision that will determine the fate of the world. Even if he linked the flame, it would eventually fade away again, and someone else would be tasked with the choice. So he leaves that choice to you. He sees that you may be strong enough to decide, so who is he to tell you what to do? Seek strength, and the rest will follow. He even has more unique dialogue if you talk to him here after linking the flame. I am no king. I am more fit to be a jester. I was unaware of my own blindness. We are feeble vessels with feebler souls. We would cast aside the prop of life, only to face greater hardship. Are you another such fool, or something more? I fail to see your design, young moth, but I see very little these days. Talking with Vendrick after obtaining the power he couldn't wield is kind of depressing. He so clearly understands that even he, the supposed king, has such a small role in this unending cycle. Talking with Vendrick is a far cry from Kingseeker Frem telling us how special we must be just for whacking a few monsters with a stick real good. Vendrick practically dares you to seek the throne. Just wait till you get there. It's no picnic, friend. I hope you figure out what to do, because I sure couldn't. Talking with Vendrick here at the height of my own power really allowed this overarching story of Dark Souls to sink its teeth into me. This isn't just a game about whacking a monster real good. It's a game about what makes us human. What does it mean to be powerful? It forces us to consider if we should ever even want this level of influence. The more you learn about the world, the more unfair it feels for it to be me who decides all of this. I came to this land because of my own curse, and here I am talking to a king and deciding what'll happen to this world. The weight of that world is crushing, but that's the crown that a monarch has to bear. After talking with Vendrick, he'll take the 4 crowns he found and perform a blessing, imbuing a cure to the undead curse within each of them. You found your cure. You will never again hollow and wither with death. You're finally free, so long as you bear the crown. And Vendrick would likely be the first to tell you that a crown is an even worse curse to bear in this world. With the closest thing to a blessing that we're likely to get, all there really is left to do is to seek the throne. With the King's Ring, we open the final cool-ass door leading to the Throne of Want. Buried deep underneath Drangleic Castle, just inside the door for one final chat, is the Emerald Herald. She tells us her real name is Shanalot, and that name was given to her by a dragon. She was born of the dragons as an attempt to circumvent the curse. It didn't work, obviously, and men continued to hollow, but she remained, becoming a muse to the undead who came to this land and hoping some young hollow would have the power to seek the throne. I don't think she's of the dark, but she does kind of fill that role. She's been pushing you on, and it seems to be serving her own end. She's sort of used you. Maybe not as cruelly as the Daughters of the Abyss used their respective kings, but you see now that this journey wasn't entirely of your own making. She thankfully warns you that Nishandra will now come for you, and you proceed down the King's Passage. This walk is long and quiet and dark. It can't be helped but to think about the long road that brought you here. Let's see what this throne is all about. Inside are the King's final guards of the throne, the Throne Watcher and the Throne Defender. If it wasn't clear enough by now, Dark Souls 2 is all about group encounters. Hope you learned how to not lock on to enemies because you'll have to fight this duel almost exclusively as a pair. The conceit here is that you have to kill the second boss within 30 seconds of the first, or that first one will get back up and fight you again. If you've already done the DLCs, it's not a particularly hard fight, but it is pretty fun for me since I took the time to learn to deal with duos. Except the King's Pets. Don't worry about that, okay? It's different. With the King's Guards dead, all that's left is you and the throne. Oh, nope. Gotta have one final surprise. Nishandra shows up to usurp our journey, now in her true form. Having already faced her sister Alana, this true form isn't actually all that surprising, but it's still pretty cool. Instead of poison, she fights you with dark magic and the hollowing curse itself. She's waited for so long. She wants you to become one with the dark under her rule, but she can't even summon Velstad. Who does she think she is? With Nishandra dealt with, now there's just us. And, oh God, there's more? Aldia is here with some more words for us. He's finally demanding an answer from you. He references the other kings whose crowns you now carry. Aldia appears as a third secret boss before the end here. It's not particularly difficult, which is nice if you're strapped for Estus, but the fire he produces can still pack a punch. Notably, this boss fight only occurs if you slay Vendrick before facing Nishandra here. Initially, I thought Aldia might be mad at you for killing his brother, but I don't think that's what's going on here. I think you seeking the Lord Souls and the throne indicate that you're looking to link the flame. The Chandra is the one who suggests that you kill Vendrick, or at least to kill his body. Following through on that might suggest to Aldia that you're leaning toward refusing the throne. Aldia sees this as you considering his questions thoughtfully. He's a scholar after all. He's much more interested in the answers the world provides to his questions, so he tests you one last time here, appearing as this primordial force of the bonfire. He's seeing if you truly have the strength of a monarch, as only a monarch could decide the fate of the world here. Slaying Aldia noticeably drops no souls and no unique soul for equipment. Aldia shed his soul in an attempt to escape the yoke of fate, and his failure is evident here. He's not dead. In fact, he actually keeps talking. I lost everything, but remained here, patiently. The throne will surely receive you, but the question remains, what do you want truly? Light? Dark? Or something else entirely? And finally, for real this time, after all that, it's just us and the throne. Will you link it? I can tell you that originally there wasn't a choice here. In the original version of the game, you'd link the flame by just sitting within the throne. The doors would close and trap you inside until the fire would fade again and another monarch would be needed. But Althea gives us another choice, one that, after talking with Vendrick and hearing his opinions about the world, really speaks to me. Abandon the throne. Let it all fade. Let humanity find their own way. The throne won't solve the undead curse, it'll just perpetuate the cycle and the Lord of Light's original sin. So I turn my back and leave, letting the fire fade and leaving the throne buried beneath this empty castle. Aldia has one final thing to say to us as we forge our new ending. There is no path. Beyond the scope of light, beyond the reach of dark, what could possibly await us? And yet, we seek it, insatiably. Such is our fate. I see this as Aldia recognizing that the search for answers and freedom is inherent to humanity. If those traits are of the dark, so be it. The cycle itself cannot wrest humanity from its shackles, so if that means we blindly forge a new path, then that's what it's going to take. After the credits roll, we simply go back to Majula. The NPCs here are all still their same old selves. Molin still acts like a rich asshole. The cartographer has completely forgotten why he's even here. Chloanne the stone trader doesn't realize that her father, the blacksmith, is feet away from her. He tragically realizes this and vows to never tell her but to watch over her as a father should. No one in Majula realizes what you've done and who you've become, except for lovely little Shalquar. This little cat is the only one in the entire game that recognizes you as the sovereign of this land, and she says it like it's a joke. But when your seat of power is called the Throne of Want, are you that surprised that obtaining it leaves you unsatisfied? Before we wrap up, just a quick note on the Abyss and the Dark Lurker. Joining the Pilgrims of the Dark Covenant allows you to explore the dark chasms of old, a clear line back to the abyssal chasms consuming Ulasil. The Abyss was fragmented, but those fragments are clearly forming into pieces and not just people. The Abyss is still hiding there somewhere in the background, gathering strength over the eons. The Dark Lurker is at the end of your pilgrimage. Seemingly an angel of the Dark Lurker is able to multiply during the fight, suggesting that the Abyss is capable of replicating itself and growing larger. Killing the Dark Lurker and speaking with the leader of the Covenant, he says this: "There is more dark within you than even you know. Dark is the mother of all. All things were born from it. Young undead, you've discovered the truest dark within you. A deep, deep dark it is. The dark that we must all face. We need the Abyss, now more than ever." It's clear that the Abyss and the Dark still have a role to play in shaping this world. Just as the flame rises, so too does the shadow rise to meet it. Dark Souls 2 is a beautiful, introspective, and personal journey through a dying world. I think it asks tougher questions of you than the first game, and the story here recontextualizes a lot of those stories from the Age of Lords in Dark Souls 1. No game in the FromSoft catalog since has forced an inward look so deeply with me as with Dark Souls 2. Few games have put such an emphasis on love stories as a constant through line in a world so bleak. It's got its share of problems. I mean, look, even a masterpiece might not reach perfection, but so many people refuse to even consider this game in the same category as the rest of the series. Many ignore this game over the perception of janky gameplay that they miss out on this beautiful story and world. I go so far as to say that Dark Souls 3 actually walks back a lot of this introspection, and I think it's a massive mistake. Rarely have I played a game so intent on asking me why I'm on the journey I'm taking. And never once before have I played a game that makes me this unsure that I even want to wear the crown. If you've somehow made it this far, thank you so much for indulging me for like way too long in this game. Dark Souls 2 has been at the front of my mind for almost a decade, so it feels really good to finally get my thoughts out there. This game means a whole lot to me, and I think it honestly gets a really bad rap. I honestly think it's got more in common with Dark Souls 1 than Dark Souls 1 and 3 have in common between each other. And I think it just gets written off too much for me to sit by and not say my piece about it. If you like listening to me rambling, consider subscribing or following my socials linked down in the description or on my channel page. My next video will be about Dark Souls 3. Noticing a theme? Then the plan is to shift to Resident Evil for the release of RE9, which I'm also super hyped for. It's possible that I'll make a video on the remake of Resident Evil 4 before 9 comes out instead of my Dark Souls 3 video. I haven't decided yet, but Dark Souls 3 is definitely in the plans. I just think a lot of the gameplay of RE9 will be influenced by 4 and probably 7 a little bit. And this series is also one that's really near and dear to my heart. If any of this sounds like a good time to you, then stay tuned. I've got no shortage of yapping I can do about these games. Till next time.